Coach Estrin, thank you for joining us here today. Coach Estrin, I'm saying that correctly? Graduate of Cal State Dominguez Hills, entering his sixth season as a head coach for the women's soccer team, and also his fifth season as the head coach for the women's softball team. Today, we're going to talk about your soccer team, and then we'll find a different day to talk about your softball team. Again, thanks for your time. And as most of our viewers know, I always start off our interviews with a general check. How are you doing? How's the family? I know recently that you had a daughter that you had brought over to college, checking in. But I always take this time to just check in. How are you guys doing? Everyone healthy? How's everyone handling this pandemic that we're going through?
Yeah, thankfully we're all healthy. She was actually COVID tested last week at her college in Kansas before she was allowed to move in to the dorms, as were all students that were attending there. She's going to a smaller NAI school, so they have a little bit easier time of, taking care of those type of things. And then my wife, our son, like everybody's stayed healthy. We've had a couple family members test positive that live outside the area. But outside of that, we're all trying to stay safe and be smart.
Yeah. I think everyone is battling this one way or the other, and hopefully everyone continues to follow the procedures that we need to follow, and hopefully get back on the field and get back to school sooner than later.
Of course, yeah.
Well, Coach, let's get right to it. Today we're going to talk about, like I said, we're going to talk about your soccer team, and we'll find a different day for softball. 2019, 8-9-4, 5-5-2 in the conference. In 2018, 9-8-3. Can you give us a general recap and summary of this season and the overall status of the program?
Yeah, we were really excited coming off the 2018 season because it was the first winning season in women's soccer for quite some time, dating back to 1999, actually. So we were really trying to piggyback off of that. And we were right there, through the entire season, had some ups and downs, but ultimately, we kind of shot ourselves in the foot several times throughout the year with the ties. And those ties, if I'm not mistaken, 3 of the 4 we were leading at halftime. One of them was a 0-0 tie, so obviously no lead change there, but we actually had a chance to win that game at LA Valley towards the end of the game on a breakaway, and we didn't. And then we lost some nail biters. We lost 1-0 at Santa Ana. We lost a home game where we held the lead for 2/3 of the game against the eventual defending state champion, Santiago Canyon. We ended up losing that one 2-1 at home. So we lost some close games, but overall I would say between 2018, 2019, we closed the gap considerably from years past, and just were very committed to being competitive in each match. And so that was really our goal and outlook for both those seasons and moving forward.
Absolutely. I think when I was looking through your scores, you're right. A lot of those scores were definitely 1 point here or there that could have gone one way or the other. But ever since you've taken helm, the team continues to improve. Just a general question for you. What do you think are some of the things that went well? And overall as a team, what do you think your program needs to improve on in order to be even more successful this 2021 when we don't quite know what's going to happen in 2020? Well, we kind of know what it's going to be, but once January hits, rules, scheduling, all that stuff comes into play. What do you think you need to improve on as a program?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think when we finally get back at it in person, I think the most important thing for us will be for the girls to buy in right away, because, at this level, our window is normally quite small and short with them in terms of time. I always say for soccer specifically, it's about an 18-month window when you really get them in their freshman year by the time they're finished with their sophomore year, And so that's not a large margin of time to condense 2 seasons. And so we've been doing Zooms and we've been doing, group texts and so on and so forth, but that's just not the same as being in person. So once we finally do get to meet in person and work out and train in person, having them all on the same page and buying into what we are trying to work towards and accomplish in our program, and I love winning. Obviously, who doesn't? But it's not just about the winning for us. We can learn from the losing, and we can grow from some of those losses. Unfortunately, we like to have more wins than losses, and add to the W column, and not see the L's pile up. So this group that's coming in with the returning group, I'm super excited when we get the opportunity to get back on the field.
Absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about your players that you had last season. You had a handful of all-conference players: Ashley Murguia, April Contreras, Marianne Angulo, Marquisha Ontiveros, Anaya Guerrero, Daniela Iniguez, Isabel Alvarez, Jasmine Castillo, and Yesenia Torres all received conference awards. You have a good mix of first-year and second-year players there. Some of these returning players, can you tell me what you're most looking forward to? Sort of going back to what you were talking about, that it takes a while sometimes for these players to buy in 100% of what your philosophy is with the program. Tell me a little bit about the players that are coming back and what you're going to be most looking forward to with some of those guys.
Yeah, so that's a tremendous group that you just named. The ladies out of that group, only 3 of those ladies cycle out, so they were sophomores out of that group, and so the rest of that group is actually returning players.
Yeah.
And one of those being Ashley Marguia was our leading goal scorer the season, and then obviously we have our number 2 and our number 3 goal scorer in Jasmine Castillo and Isabel Alvarez that will also be returning. So between the 3 of them, that's a nice little combination of returners for our offensive side, to combine with the players that are coming in. And then on the defensive side, we have our center back, Daniela, who did very well, and Marion and Anaya, that all did a fantastic job on the back line to really solidify that back line, that also will be returning, and we have the majority of that back line intact. So between the offensive returners that we have, and those defense returners, and the incoming group, I'm really just chomping at the bit, but they're excited too. They're like, Coach, when do we get to meet in person? We're wrapping up with summer school this week. That's obviously all been online, but they are like, when? I said, well, according to 3C2A, it's going to be, in January. So, cross your fingers, maybe something happens, with the county and the state health-wise, and maybe we're able to meet before then. But, until then, it's just going to be online, and just got to stay positive. So. Absolutely.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. But, I've done a handful of these interviews, and, each sport, each coach is obviously different. And one of the challenges that some of these coaches have faced is obviously the recruiting side, because there are rules all over the place. On top of that, not knowing specifically, when the season is going to start, what are the options being provided. But looking at your roster and some of the things that I've been hearing about, you guys have a pretty healthy set of recruits coming in, ready to come in 2021. One, how'd you accomplish that? Because I'm sure some of the coaches would love to see or would love to know how you did that. But you have a handful of players that are eagerly waiting to don the Roadrunners uniform. Can you tell me at this point some of these players that you're definitely looking forward to in joining your team?
Yeah, first and foremost, when I took this position, I was a high school coach locally, and then my assistant that I brought on, he was also, or he currently is still a high school coach. George Polanco has been at Cathedral City now for 8 years. Mm-hmm. And so we're really entrenched in the community. We both started together a club program in 2012. And actually now the freshmen in this group are girls that actually I coached with my daughter when they first started playing club together back in 2012. And so I'm very familiar with a lot of these girls. Either I coached high school against them, they played club for me when they were younger. And we've had girls in past years come to us from the club or Coach Polanco's program, whether it be high school or club. But it wasn't at the youngest age. This is the youngest age group. And so that being said, is when I got the position, I hired him. It was San Bernardino Valley had at the time like a dozen girls in 2014 from our Coachella Valley, and so my goal as a coach here was to recruit locally effectively, and try to keep the talent in the valley.
course.
And so slowly but surely, like the next year, San Bernardino Valley only had like 6, and then they only had 4, and then they only had 2, and now they've had like 1 or 2 every year. And we'll lose 1 or 2 every year out of the area to like San Diego Mesa. San Diego's beautiful. I don't blame them. And then, they'll go to various JCs throughout SoCal. I know we have one at Cypress that is a local kid. So at the end of the day, we just focused on the kids that want to go to COD and want to play for our program. And yeah, we're stoked about the group that's coming in because again, it's like we have a lot of familiarity with them. And we were able to recruit them, fortunately, before the pandemic, majority of them. And so, fortunately for us, the high school season did really compete before anything major happened health-wise within our country and the world. And so we really had all the recruiting pretty much, like, I would say 85 to 90% already done. And then a few kind of came in late, but that was how we did it, so.
Got it. Hey, Coach, let's segue a little bit. Obviously there are rules that we have to oblige by. There are ways in things that we have to follow depending on what the CCAA hands down. But also, coaches are trying to figure out ways how to keep in touch with their players, especially when January arrives. When it's January, let's go. Do you have any plans on you talked briefly about it. You guys are doing Zoom calls, group text messages. What are your plans in order to keep these players, in a sense, kind of focused and prepared? Because once season is a go, you don't want to be starting from -0 and then getting to a point where you finally have them, whether they're out of shape, whether they're not focused mentally. And, I played college sports, and my coach always said, if you're going to lose a match, you're going to lose because you got beat, but you're not going to lose because you got tired or you're out of shape. And so obviously not having them hands-on is difficult. And especially with a sport like soccer, which you're 100% every single time and you can't let down. How are you guys going to get around that?
I mean, there's challenges, obviously, but, we're all in the same boat. I keep telling the girls, like, hey, I told my daughter the same thing. It's happening to everybody everywhere, We're not in a special area. So obviously the 3C2A, I mean, everybody's abiding by the same rules. So in that respect, like, we're all in this together, obviously. Nobody's getting any head start or special treatment. So it's going to face the challenges. But, what I've done this summer is I took every returner and I assigned them a recruit, a new incoming player.
Got it.
And so when they're doing their workouts, if you're my partner, I have to report back to you. But vice versa, like, if you're the returner, like, I should be talking to the incomer, like, wow, your time for your mile was really good. And then she should be asking, well, what was your time? And it's a way to hold each other accountable. And then that's also a way for, them to get to know somebody new,
sure.
Start a dialogue with somebody. The way the numbers worked out, everybody got every returner got a new player, and then in some cases, because of the numbers of new players coming in, a couple of players that I wanted to give added responsibility to got like two players instead of just one. And for the most part, some of them had a familiarity maybe with that player as well, depending on what high school they went to.
Got it.
But for example, I have one returner from Coachella Valley High School this year, but I have 4 recruits from Coachella Valley High School. Well, guess what? I couldn't assign that girl all 4. So I spread, some of those players out to other players that I thought, live in the same geographical area as our valley, that, played maybe with her in, rec soccer growing up, or played club with that player, or had some, like, commonality. They know the same people. I have some former players whose younger sisters are now playing for me. And so, like, one of the players I assigned, both their older sisters played for me. And so, they share that in common, and so just stuff like that.
I love that. I love that, keeping the accountability of each other. And also at the same time for your incoming freshmen, giving them the a look-see, per se, of what it takes to be a student athlete at this level. And you don't have the option of not coming in shape. If you want to compete, here's where you got to be. I love that.
Yeah.
Hey, Coach, again, thank you again for your time. One last question for you.
Sure.
What's the one thing that you've learned to appreciate more during this lockdown?
Yeah, I think sorry, my son.
I'm surprised my 3-year-old hasn't come in here yet, so totally fine, totally get it.
No problem. That's always the spice of life now.
Yeah.
You never know who's going to come in. And so I would say, let's not take any day for granted. But ultimately, I think I've learned from this, I'm extremely blessed to do what I do. I love my job. I miss my student athletes. I miss my staff from both teams. Mm-hmm. And that face-to-face interaction is maybe something that we've taken for granted, getting to see people on a daily basis and interact. And so I just can't wait to the day that, we can get back on the field or the court or whatever sport it is and have that interaction again and get to competing. So that's probably what I take away from this whole ordeal. And we've definitely benefited from spending a lot of family time and loving up on each other and keeping each other close. So
can't go wrong with that. Before I let you go, I did write this note down. I forgot to ask you a little bit earlier. One of your players, April Contreras, recently signed with West Virginia State. Can you tell me a little bit about April and how she ended up making her decision to play out there?
Yeah, it was something I was super proud of her for, and the coach I made contact with the year before, she was a brand new coach, and she reached out to me and probably every JC coach in California trying to get players.
Yeah.
And for the 2018 season, I had 2 players signed to NAIAs in various states, but it was a little bit late in the process, so I didn't have anybody for her. And that was, I think, the first year. 2019 was the first season at West Virginia State. And so when she got hired, I think it was 2018, end of 2018, and start recruiting. And so April just did a fantastic job because she got the opportunity to play in the sophomore showcase, which, we've only had 3 players get that opportunity. And she went all the way to the Dianza and play in that game, which is quite a long trip from down here. And she was talking to coaches from various states and ended up West Virginia State continued to speak with her, and I really applaud her because she saw the opportunity to invest in her education as a student athlete and take a chance and go, cross country to go experience something completely new. And she just went out to West Virginia last week. They unfortunately just decided in Division II and Division III, NCAA voted to move everything to the spring, but you got to find a silver lining in everything. And I for her, I would say that that's actually a better opportunity maybe for her to get acclimated with her teammates, her coaching staff, maybe more time to impress the coaches. And she was a great student athlete for us. She was a scholar student. She works very hard off the field, in the classroom. And I'm looking forward to, her final 2 years there. And I wish her nothing but the best.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, thank you again. Please stay safe. Love what you're doing over there at COD. You have a professional program that you're running over there, and you're definitely setting a really good example, not just to all your student athletes, but also the other coaches within the conference. So thank you for your time, and we will be talking soon.
All right, Bo. Appreciate what you do, and keep up the good work, man.
Thank you, sir. You have a good one.
All right, take care.